Welcome back, students. In this short video, we will cover the basis to the integumentary system of Unit 1 lab material. Now, the integumentary system consists mainly of the skin. These are skin models. Now, with the skin, there are two major outer layers. The outermost layer is considered the epidermis. The outermost layer. Follow that, we can see that on the very outside, we actually see hair coming out of that portion. Just deep to that, we will see those layers come apart, and where we see blood vessels come into play, this is what's considered the dermis. Now, once we get down to the bottom of the dermis, or we could say the most deepest portion of the dermis, now we have reached what is known as the hypodermis. The hypodermis is where we're going to see these fat cells arising, as well as loose connective tissue. So this tissue, as I said, this will be adipose tissue. This is our fat cells, located just underneath the surface of our skin. Let's move back on to the epidermis. The epidermis is several layers, but the main thing that we want you to know is the outer and innermost layer as well. The outermost specific layer of the epidermis, the outermost layer is called the stratum corneum. It is the thickest. As we get to the innermost layer, we get to this most innermost layer, we see this highlighted in pink. This is called the stratum germinativum. I like to say, though, stratum basale, much shorter, much easier to remember. We move over to this model, same representation for basale, simple cuboidal epithelium. Let's go ahead and move down to our structures to identify. We have first off the hair shaft. This is the visible portion of the hair. So if we look here, hair shaft. Now the hair shaft sits within what is known as a tube-like structure called the hair follicle. What we can see is the hair follicle is the structure that surrounds the hair shaft. So hair shaft, you can actually see it stick out of the epidermis. We move into part of the nervous system now. The first structure is called a tactile or Meissner's corpuscle. These are light touch receptors. They are going to be found mainly in the upper regions of the dermis. So if we look at the dermis here, we see this white structure. This white structure is going to be a tactile, also known as a Meissner's corpuscle. If we move on to our other model, you can see that same exact structure represented in white. And if we follow the yellow, usually when we see yellow, it's referred to as a nerve. So a portion of nerve, tactile corpuscle, light touch receptor. If we move back down to the checklist, we have sweat glands and sweat gland ducts. Now, a sweat gland is going to be deep most of the time within that hypodermal layer. You can see those arising here as a tangled jumbled ball of mess. And if we follow the sweat gland duct upward, we can see on the model how they squiggle upward and come out most upper portion of the epidermis. Again, sweat needs to reach the surface of our skin to help cool us down. Moving into the next portion, we have a sebaceous gland. The sebaceous gland, its major purpose is to secrete oil, which is going to help keep the skin more supple. A sebaceous gland is always going to be found along the lines somewhere along a hair follicle. So right here, we have one sebaceous gland. We have another sebaceous gland here, as well as in gray highlighted sebaceous glands. Moving on, we have the erector pilate muscle. The erector pilate muscle sits attached as well to the hair follicle, and just like with muscles, skeletal muscles, we will see striations. Since the muscle needs to pull, it's going to create a pull with the muscle to make the hair shaft stick up more or less, make the hair fall up on end. Oftentimes this is going to happen when we have things called goosebumps. The muscle is going to pull, pulling the hair straight, so that way it can stand up on end, helps to hold more heat against the surface of the skin. Moving downward, let's go ahead and cover it one more time since it's on your checklist. We have adipose tissue found in that hypodermis. Last but not least, go ahead and cross the very last one off your checklist. The only thing that we're going to be covering here is the dermal papilla. The dermal papilla are these little points that we're going to see at the most superior portion, or I should say outer portion, of the dermis. This model is great because you get a three-dimensional representation. dermal capilla. Go ahead and cross off epidural ridges. We have a couple more structures to cover on this model here. We've already found the sebaceous glands, which are going to secrete oil. We found the sweat glands with the sweat gland ducts, which of course secrete sweat. We had those corpuscles here, which, yes, those were our Meissners, tactile corpuscles. But we have one more deep structure here located in the subcutaneous, or we like to call this the hypodermal layer. We see the adipose tissue, yes, but what we have here is a much deeper corpuscle. This is called a Pacinian's corpuscle, and this is more of our more pressure sensors type of corpuscle for sending information back to the brain to understand pain and little things like that.